Hi guys, it's Kalina with Cue the Confetti again to talk to parents. If you've watched my videos, I am a preschool teacher, and when the coronavirus broke out and we were all asked to stay home, I started making videos for parents and for children, little activities that they can do, and I wanted to do more parent tips of things that I've done either through education or through my own parenting to help my child understand the world, or to help, and really to help other people's children to understand the world. As you can tell by the title of the video, today's subject is super important and super serious, and I hope that you are willing to listen, and maybe you can learn something from me, because I've learned a lot. I wanted to preface this first of all by saying I am in no way an expert on racism or race. I do have experiences that I've gone through in my journey to recognize my own racism and white privilege. I hope that you're still listening after I said white privilege. This is a tough subject, and to be quite honest, the reason I am so nervous about it is the last thing that I want this video to do is to speak over any person of color. I hope that this comes off as me being an ally and helping other white people understand where my heart changed and where I transformed my thinking. I originally wanted to speak about diversity in general at the beginning of me starting this project, and then I decided it was too heavy. 2 months into me doing my project, another publicized brown body has been wrongfully murdered. I knew I wanted to make a video, and then I got scared. And then this last week, where we live, there was a gentleman named Travis Miller who also had an experience of racism, and I knew I had to do it because not only was the video upsetting, which you can Google it. I'm not going to really talk about either of Ahmaud's or Travis's incident. Very easily Googleable. It was heartbreaking, and I knew that because of my whiteness, I'm able to set aside and not think about race, because most of the world that is portrayed through media look like me. Because I am not an expert or a person of color, I will be linking many people, many resources down below that you can follow along, that I've used, that I've had suggested to me. This is going to be kind of a story time, kind of a tips for parenting type of video. So I hope you're still with me, and I hope you're ready for this journey, and I am super nervous. First of all, I was raised in a lovely suburban neighborhood north of Dallas, which was predominantly white and predominantly middle class to upper middle class. I went to a pretty large school that was predominantly white, and honestly, in my naive self, thought that racism was a thing of the past. I just thought it was eradicated with civil rights. Silly me. Cannot think of a class that I took in all of my years that taught about the civil rights movement more than maybe 2 paragraphs in a history book. Knew about Martin Luther King Jr., knew about Rosa Parks, and I knew about Malcolm X, and that was it. And moved to East Texas to go to college, and then my husband let me know that we were transferring to Shreveport, Louisiana. And I was super excited about going to Shreveport, just because it was out of the state of Texas. I've lived in Texas my whole life. I just like adventure. I like changing things. And to be quite honest, the first 2 impressions I had of Shreveport, the first day we moved there, which was on Halloween, was how friendly everybody was. I couldn't believe how many people were just like, hey, how's it going? How are you? And honestly, number 2 was that there were so many black people. I had never been around that many black people. Just had always grown up in predominantly white towns. Very quickly after that, I realized racism was still very much alive. And when I say racism, I mean the ugly racism. We started looking for churches, and the first church we went to when we were leaving the church is when I heard a white person say the N-word. So I was very much like taken aback of like what type of time warp I am. And from there, I got the to-date most important job I've ever had. And not because of anything I did to help people, but of how much it transformed me. I have notes because I didn't want... Yeah. I was hired on as a youth director in a predominantly white Methodist church. However, the youth group did not reflect the population of the church. It was pretty split. Well, by the time I was done there, and we moved again, it was pretty split down the middle, 50-50 black and half black and half white students. And I will say the topic that came up more than anything in our youth group was race. And it was it's the first time in my life that a subject that was very easily ignored because it never directly affected me, I never thought about it, was constantly something I thought about. Constantly. For the good. I became a listener. I started understanding systems and how they work for certain communities of our government. We talked about everything from love and hair care and parents and just the difference of how we each lived. And I know that my students learned a lot, and I know I learned a ton. Jesus changed for me in Shreveport. Growing up in a youth group in the 90s and early 2000s, I thought the most important thing that I could give Jesus was my virginity. Truly, honestly. And that's a whole nother video. Wow. And the Jesus that met me in Shreveport, Louisiana was a Jesus who was looking for change and revolution and justice. And that was a Jesus that I was excited to follow and felt like that was truly what we were called to do, which is serve God's people and making sure that we are all loved. And I started realizing how much racism was in my heart and is in my heart, because it's still not, this is not a one and done deal like, oh, I recognize it, that's it, done. Because it's deep seated and systematic, and especially being a Southern person, just a lot to unpack. And if you're wanting to unpack those things, like I said, I'm going to leave links below of wonderful authors, people of color who can help. And it literally was transformative to me. That's the Jesus I want to that's the Jesus I want to worship, and it's been difficult for me to find a church that has that Jesus. But that's it again, a whole nother story. So in that time in Shreveport, man, it was just a learning experience. I cannot tell you, I started seeing racism differently. Because to me, racism meant that you were a part of the KKK, a slave owner, those kind of things, like truly evil. And I realized racism is not that. And I think that that's why white people get so defensive when white privilege is talked about, or racism, because they don't view themselves as being the KKK or slave owner, which is likely true. And, but that doesn't mean that they're not racist. And the first thing I learned was to listen. listen to somebody if one of my youth got up enough guts to tell me that I was being racist because I'm one, white, and two, a authority figure in their eyes, then I needed to listen, because quite frankly I don't know what's hurtful, and I'm not in the culture, and I am just as ignorant as most, and I need to learn. And I started seeing, once I started hearing their stories, I started seeing, oh wow, that's not okay. A great example is people in the church. The students had been in the church for 10 years before I got there, and people who were regularly in their lives still couldn't distinguish them from each other. Say looked alike. That's racist. Like, I don't, and I could have easily been that person, except for because of meeting them and learning them and knowing their stories, they couldn't be more different than each other. And I learned the names of different hairstyles and what's a twist and a twist out, and I enjoyed learning about it, and I wanted to hear about it, and I wanted to hear their stories, and I enjoyed sitting with them while they did each other's hair, and then even sometimes attempted to do my hair, which was an epic fail. But they taught me what to put in my daughter's hair, which we still do. There was just a lot of discussion over the fear of a sibling or a cousin going to jail for the same thing that their white neighbor did, but they received probation, if that. I witnessed taking 2 students to fill out job applications with the same grades and the same times available, the same experience, and I watched the white person get the job and not my black student. I mean, I have a lot of stories that is heartbreaking and scary, and I can't fix it for them. I can't fix their brownness, and I don't want to. They're beautiful, and this is their story, and that's what I would just tell them over and over again. I am not your savior. I cannot save you from this. I can only help you narrate your story and help you get through this and give you ideas and be an advocate for you and tell you your brown body is beautiful, and Jesus made you this way and loves you this way, and the other people are wrong. And there are a lot of stories that will just stay between me and my students and the experiences we had. And I'm serious when I say I'm still working on the racism that I've been taught, and trying to unteach myself, and I still make a lot of mistakes, and I am so thankful that I have people in my life that can correct me on those mistakes. So I wanted to give first 3 tips to adults on how I went about that journey. Of course, I just kind of told you the little story, but the first thing I had to do was listen to what people of color are saying. Understand their stories, understand their struggles. Don't interject. Don't say, well, that's not what I meant. Even if it's not a person of color story, if somebody is telling you that what you did hurt them, that is a time of growth, and to understand that I can't act that way. And I think the world would be a better place if a lot more people understood that. I love listening to stories and listening to people and understanding where they come from and their experiences, and if they want to throw some recipes at me, I love that too. I just like trying to understand. I just like new things and new experiences. So learning about how people were brought up and how different we are is amazing to me. And it's amazing to me that we're all put here on this earth and have completely different experiences. And so I would ask you to first listen to a person of color. That also means then after you listen, to learn more. Again, I said my high school experience, or my school experience with civil rights and black culture and anything other than white colonialism type history was not taught at my school. So I'm having to go back and learn what really happened. So do your own research. Do not ask a person of color to do it for you. At the very least, it's exhausting, especially if they're surrounded by a lot of white folk. And at the very most, it causes pain. Go Google it. In this day and age, we have the ability to research on our own. And third, recognize where your racism is at. Again, racism doesn't mean that you were a slave owner or you're part of the KKK. It can be things that you didn't even know was racist out of your own ignorance and innocence. And that stops now because you've now learned. And now it's a transformation that you can make. And this transformation doesn't happen overnight. This transformation it's work, and it's holy work, as Austin Channing Brown says in her book, which I'll link below. So those are the things that if you are really working towards recognizing that you have white privilege and recognizing that your whiteness is affecting others, then I really encourage you to do that. So how to talk to your white kid about race. It's not one talk. These are multiple talks, little building block talks, just like the sex talk. I can do a video on that too, because you shouldn't just have one sex talk. You should have started talking. Your kid's a toddler. But that's another video. But anyway, it's not one talk, it's multiple talks. You start at the very lowest level. When my daughter was 2 years old and started recognizing that her friends were all different shades of colors, we talked about it. It wasn't shameful. It was just very factual. We kept it very factual. We didn't talk about it further from there. I made sure not. The biggest mistake we make as parents when it comes to people that are different is to make a child feel shame for asking a question about it. Because with people with disabilities, people of color, people of different ethnicities, wearing different, just all of it. Just keep it factual, keep it short, keep it simple, keep it on your child level, and don't add shame to the mix, because they don't know about that. Like, don't add it, ever. Why are you shaming your child? Don't do it. Number 2, the danger of being colorblind. Something I used to say too. The danger of saying, we're colorblind here, we don't see color, is actually quite insulting. It's saying to a person of a different color that I don't see the way you experience the world as different from me. And while that is the goal, like that would be the goal, is that we all experience the earth the same way because people act the same way, that is not the truth. My husband can go running around the neighborhood at any time of day or night and not risk getting shot. It is not a thing that comes across his mind. Sure, he worries about being hit by a car, but he doesn't have to worry about being accused of a crime when he's running for his health. It's not something that we have to go through. So when you are innocently or trying to nicely say we're colorblind here, you are negating the fact that the world is different for other people, and it's really undermining that, and it's not helping the situation. So don't tell your kids that we're colorblind and we treat everybody the same. Just nix the colorblind thing. Yeah, of course we treat everybody the same, but understand that equipping your child for them to know that other people might not treat them the same, and that they can be an ally to a person of color is important. That also, again, goes for different neurodiverse people or able-bodied people. Really anybody in the margins. We treat everybody the same. And in my practice, it's because God first loved us, so we love others. And the first time that I really, other than color differences, talked to my daughter about like the civil rights movement was when she was 4 years old. We were on a family trip to Nashville, and we stopped in Birmingham, Alabama at Kelly Ingram Park. If you're not familiar with Birmingham, Alabama, in 1963, there was a church bombing that killed 4 girls, and it was at a black church. It killed 4 black girls, and that was the intention of the bomber, was to hurt people just because of the color of their skin. And that is exactly what I told my daughter. And there were statues of the girls. It was a space for me to tell my daughter that there was a time where people were treated differently just because of the color of their skin. And that's what I said. And we walked through the statues. They have amazing and hard to look at statues of different times during the civil rights movement of how black people were being treated. And I didn't explain, again, she was 4. I didn't explain, like, I didn't go through the whole civil rights movement, but there's one, and I'll show a picture here of the dogs attacking, and it's like a sculpture that you walk through so that you're feeling like you're being attacked. And I just talked to her about feelings. I said, what do those dogs look like? Nice dogs? No, yeah, people sent those dogs to hurt people just because of the color of their skin. And there was a statue of, I think it's 3 black young people. You can tell that they're teenagers huddled behind a building with terror on their face, and they're hiding from being pelted with water. And I just said, do those people look happy? No, mommy. And explained to her that no, people were trying to hurt them because of the color of their skin. It was super powerful. I told her that it was wrong, that we thought this way, and that while the laws have changed, that there are still people who feel that way, and that we are working actively to make sure that we change that we don't feel that way, and that we need to make sure that we don't continue with letting other people think that it's okay to feel that way. And I think that that's probably where I've been most guilty in my walk through this, is allowing white people to say that white privilege doesn't exist, and that they don't understand, and that well, it's different if you don't understand, but if you vehemently ignore that racism still exists today, then you are not helping. And I am not only going to be not racist, but I want to be anti-racist. So working really hard on stopping anything that I hear as racist, and educating, and being an ally for people of color. And we talk about race a lot, and we talk about differences of people a lot, and how that translates to kids is through their books and their toys. So I'm going to share with you a few. I don't have any toys, honestly, because Gentry really doesn't play with toys anymore. Electronics, whatever. But when she was a child, we made sure that we had brown baby dolls. We made sure we had brown Barbies. We made sure, honestly, I purposely gave her calico critters, which are animals, so that, because not just people of color, but I really didn't want a lot of Barbies up in the house, and that's a whole nother thing. But I do make sure that our books are, again, it doesn't have to talk about race, just having the image of people that are different than you is important to have in your home. So, of course, one of my favorite books, I've already done it, I Like Myself. And we talk about how beautiful brown skin is, because, quite frankly, the media is not talking about it enough. So we make sure that we go, oh my goodness, look at how beautiful she is. Look at how happy she is. What a lovely child. This is one of my favorite Ezra Jack Keats. He has a lot. Snow Day, of course. But images of people of color is important. This is another favorite book. It's really a counting book, but I love how it shows all different, not only ethnicities, but types of families. Again, not explicit, doesn't say, oh look, this family is all different. It just talks about family. So that's my families look different. I'll be honest, when I purchased this book, I thought it was the jam. I am conflicted about this book. It's a sweet story, and the reason I got it was because I'd heard my students of color talking about the beauty industry, and how the words on makeup that is intended for white people are nice words and pretty words, and the words for darker complexions are not. And this was a sweet little, but I honestly don't know how I feel about this book. So if you're a person of color and you hate this book, tell me. This is a book that talks about diversity. It's called The Sandwich Swap. It was actually written by Queen, I think her name's Rania. And it's about two girls who are from two different cultures who eat two different lunches. And they don't like each other's lunches. And at the end, they decide they are cool with it. I like the book. Gentry loves the book. Again, with the just having a brown face. There's nothing, they're not talking about the color of her skin in this book at all. It's just a girl named Truly. Gentry and Truly are a lot alike. It's important for a child to identify, like, we really aren't that different. Truly likes science, I like science. It's as simple as that. Same. Maya Tibbs. We haven't read this one yet. It's still kind of advanced for Gentry, but I have it. Again, just representation of different. If you look at your things and all you see are white people on the front of your covers of your books or white faces on all your toys, then it's time to look and decide, how can I diversify? Maybe I'm not being as inclusive. I will also say that this is one of Gentry's favorite books. And this goes beyond just recognizing that our colors are different. This is how we do it, which I do not like the title of the book just because I think of this is how we do it. But it's a really beautiful book. It's one day in the lives of 7 kids from around the world. My daughter is obsessed with geography. She has been for a while, like since she was 3 or 4. The reason I like this book is it not only shows like we eat different things, we have different cultures, we have different ways we get to school. My daughter's always understood about ethnic foods because I don't eat just white people food. I don't even know what white people food is. So that didn't shock her. In fact, that was one of her favorites, is to look through and go, ooh, which meal would you eat? Which one would you pick for breakfast? The shocker for her were the bedrooms. See, this is breakfast. And we go through and read it and go, oh, which one would you like to eat for breakfast today? I mean, obviously she picks Nutella. Which kid wouldn't want chocolate for breakfast? How they get to school, what they call their teachers. Oh, this is where I sleep. So Gentry couldn't believe how many people sleep with their siblings. And I had to explain to her that, yeah, a lot of people don't have more than one room and sleep in the same bed with their siblings, not just around the world, but in our neighborhood. It's kind of a thing, like you're an only child. I really encourage you to expand your horizons. If you're still with me, thank you for listening. That's honestly all I have. That's, again, I'm not an expert. I am only speaking for Kalina. I am continually working on recognizing the racism and combating that, and I can't be silent anymore. I hope this helps you understand that it is important to talk to your child about race, that I hope this helps some of you guys. I hope that I did not offend anybody, because that is honestly my biggest fear in making this video, and I hope that we can all learn.